Hi, welcome back. So for writing 122Z, a large portion of our class, an emphasis is research questions and problem-based argumentative research. So whatever topic or source you found for the rhetorical précis, you do not need to use the same topic for the research proposal, but whatever topic you choose going forward is going to be what you stick with throughout the rest of the summer term. So just to highlight that importance is that your research question, your topic that you choose going forward is going to stick with you for the rest of summer. So I want you to think about what are you interested in researching? So let's talk about how to formulate a strong research question and what a research question can look like. So problem-based argumentative research is the focus for our class this term. You're selecting a real-world problem to research and solutions surrounding that topic, and you're going to stick with that topic, like I said, for roughly the next 7 weeks or so. These slides, which I am going to upload for you, talk about how you can formulate a strong research question, and they have some good samples. Before we begin, though, I want to start by saying I don't want you to go into research already knowing what side you're on, and I want you to try to choose a topic that you don't really have a stance on or know solutions that exist so far. So I would ideally like you to research something that you don't know a lot about, but you are interested in learning more as far as what solutions exist. So research is going to help you formulate the sides of the argument and the options that you will be able to present as solutions and which one you think is going to be the best solution to this problem based on the research that you conduct. And I wanted to mention, I thought it was worth mentioning, from our textbook on page 170, they mention cognitive and confirmation bias. So cognitive bias, we all have experiences that have led us to where we are today and that have helped shape our worldview and who we are and what we believe. So that's a cognitive bias. But what I'm asking you to avoid for our research is called a confirmation bias. And this is when you're seeking information that supports your assumption or an argument that you already want to make, and it doesn't challenge your current beliefs about a topic. So I'm asking you, try to avoid confirmation bias. Okay, go into this research with an open mind. Maybe you're not sure what you want to research yet. That is what I would recommend. Okay, oops, let's go back. So I'm asking you to research without bias. Here's an example of a topic I've received in the past. For example, don't go into your research already knowing that you want to argue that wind energy is the ideal form of renewable for whatever purpose. You're going into this research to find out which is the best form, right? So if you already know or have a side or have an opinion about something, try to set that aside and do your research without that confirmation bias. Okay, and that's just one example. So here are my tips for how to write a good research question. You don't want it to be too broad or too narrow. It must be something you're interested in. So I want you to research something that you genuinely want to find out more about. It has to be arguable and not one-sided. You can't just answer it with a yes or no answer. It can't be purely opinion-based, so there has to be research about it, is what I mean by that. So you should be able to generate research database hits based on this topic. And your topic for this class should attempt to solve a real-world problem that exists, or try to offer solutions to that problem. So a little bit more about what broad versus narrow, what that can look like. If your research topic is too broad, essentially what will happen is you'll get too many research database hits and it won't really seem focused in terms of your research. But if it's too narrow, you're not going to get enough database hits, and writing the paper and doing the research this quarter is going to be pretty difficult. Stronger research questions tend to start with language like how, which, and why, because normally if you have to explain how or why something happens, it's not answered with a yes or no answer. So here are a few examples of topics I've received in the past. So let's say you're interested in researching renewable energy. Maybe a question that you're wondering is what benefits come from it. A better question, a more well-rounded research question, could be which form of renewable energy will help transition the United States to a 100% renewable nation. So this is a real topic I've had someone look at in the past. It starts with the word which, and it's going to be, just looking at that question, in my mind, it's going to be comparing forms of renewable energies in order to get us to this end result that they're looking for. So essentially, where did they start off, right? What is this problem? The problem that they wanted to research more about was climate change, energy sources, and more. The solution that they wanted to find was what can help make the US more renewable or help us make a transition to becoming more renewable. And the argument they settled on after they were done researching, right? So you won't know what your argument is until you've done a lot of this research. Their argument was wind energy is the best to help transition the US for such and such reasons, and they gave those reasons in their research. So that's just one example. Here's another one. The topic this student wanted to research was declining salmon population in Oregon. And they asked, why is the population declining? Because they knew that the salmon population in Oregon has been declining for a number of years, and they were curious to find out why. And a better question that they were able to find after researching was, how can dams be improved so that they do not negatively affect salmon runs in Oregon rivers? So essentially the problem they started off with was they knew that dams were affecting salmon population in some way, but they weren't sure how. The solution they wanted to find was, how can dams be changed, or what can we do to help the salmon? And the argument that was made after research, again, it took a lot of research to get to this argument. That's what the research is going to be helpful for this quarter. They came to fish ladders at dams need to be improved in order to help save this population that is dying due to the dams in Oregon rivers. So it took a lot of research for them to get to this point, but they knew kind of what they were interested in and where they wanted to start, but they didn't know what they'd be arguing for yet. So really quick, just to show you an example of what might be considered too broad or too narrow. If we're looking at the question on the left, how does big business destroy the economy? First of all, destroy is a little subjective here, so I would try to remain more objective. Again, don't go into this with any biases, but genuinely, what do you want to research and what are you trying to find out? Destroy is a little subjective. The question is also a little bit vague and broad, but if we want to narrow it down, I would ask, what big business are we focusing on, and which economy are you trying to focus on? So in this case, we narrowed it down to, how does Amazon financially impact local economies? It can still be a lot more narrow than that even, but that is heading in the right direction. And something that I wanted to mention, right, based on some of these sample topics I've been mentioning, the solution might not be quite as clear as side A and side B. There might be a whole spectrum of choices to choose from here and that you can compare in terms of solutions. But there also might be, let's say these side A and side B are these are the two main sides of this argument. Perhaps you're offering a new solution, a hybrid of the two, or something that hasn't quite been done yet. You can also, that is totally fair to say, and you can definitely do that. Okay. Here are a few sample questions that we're gonna workshop and turn them into stronger questions. On the left here, what foods should vegetarians eat, right? We can usually answer that with just a list. But if you look on the right-hand side, which types of foods can help vegetarians in their protein intake and why? That is a lot more specific. You're focusing on protein intake, and you're tacking on the and why, asking us, or essentially forcing us to elaborate on why is it better. Question 2, is online education effective? That could be answered with a yes or no. Would require some research to back you up. But question 2 on the right-hand side, how can online education benefit certain student populations? Thinking about demographics, thinking about students who are in the workforce, looking for an online class that can better fit their schedule, and so on, right? So that's definitely a more clear way to narrow it down. And then number 3, what are the effects of using and investing in cryptocurrency? Again, what are those effects? We might be able to just list them. But over here, how has cryptocurrency impacted e-commerce? Asking how is asking us to elaborate and explain on how that has happened and exactly what that effect has been. So anyway, just a few examples. And finally, research questions, you're turning them into more solidified arguments, but that develops as you research. So I'm not expecting your initial research question to be perfect. It'll change and adapt over time as you research. Your question that you're starting off with is a guide, right? It's guiding you into your research to help you find what those solutions are. Once you know more about those sides, the problems and the solutions, that is when you can get to your main argumentative thesis. So using some of those samples I just went over earlier in this video, wind energy is the most reliable form of renewable energy and the one that can help the US move closer to a 100% renewable nation at a quicker pace. This was a real thesis that I received based on that research. Again, it took a long time for them to get to comparing renewables, ending up at wind energy is the one. And then that thesis at the bottom here, changes must be made to the current fish ladder system that Oregon dams use to allow fish to pass upstream in order to avoid this population declining any further. Real thesis I've received in the past. they're saying changes have to be made to this certain piece, right, of this research in order to get to the solution that they're trying to find. So anyway, it'll take a while for you to get there, but your research question is essentially your guide to research this term. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions, and we're going to move on to the next portion. So once you have your research question, the next step is going to be submitting your research proposal for our class. This is going to be due July 7th. This prompt is found under week 2, so you can find all the details there. It's worth 50 points, and here's the overview. Let's talk about it. So many research assignments require a formal project proposal in which you formally present and justify your research idea. So that's what you're doing here. I have an article I'm asking you to read that's linked on the calendar. But essentially, it talks about research proposals are answering the following questions. What do you plan to accomplish in your research? Why? And how are you going to do it? Okay, so take a look at this prompt a little bit more in depth, but we're going to scroll down and look at the template for the research proposal. This is essentially what you're deleting my information and you're filling it in with your own. And here it is. Okay, so you're starting out with the introduction, roughly 200 words here. You're giving me the situation for your topic. So what is it about? Why is it important? What are you trying to research? What are those sides that you might already be aware of, but you're not really sure which is the best solution, and so on. The research question, this is where you're inputting that research question that you formulated after reviewing the slides that I just talked about in the first portion of this video, okay? Then you're talking about the audience, who would benefit from this research. And you're going beyond just me and people in this class, but who would benefit from this research in general? Okay, what do you want them to know or take away after reading or learning about your topic? And then you have potential resources, roughly 100 to 200 words. What resources might you use for this research? What have you found so far, if anything? If you want to reuse your précis source here, you can mention that source if it's useful. If it's on a different topic, that's okay, you don't need it here. But essentially, you're letting me know where might you conduct research this term, what databases, Google Scholar, that sort of thing. And then outcomes and roadblocks. This is where you describe your overall objective. How are you going to get there? And what might you encounter along the way? So one example I have here is the topic too narrow or broad? Are you wanting to workshop your question or get feedback on your topic for how you can narrow it or how you can, hone this research direction a little bit further? Any roadblocks that you can anticipate. And if you're not really sure, you can write that here as well, but I just wanted some information about what do you anticipate potentially giving you some issue for research this quarter. Okay, and then when you're submitting this proposal, you're going to follow this template, include the section headers, so potential resources, audience, you're keeping those section headers in here, and you're submitting it on Canvas by July 7th. Okay. That is the research proposal. That's the next chunk of week 2, along with a rhetorical précis. Please let me know if you have any questions, and you can find more information under week 2 on Canvas.